Beneath the Redcoat's boots. Boston, 1775. The city was a tinderbox, every whispered word and furtive glance charged with the quiet thunder of revolution. The cobblestones beneath the trembling feet of its inhabitants seemed to pulse with a restless urgency, as if the earth itself could no longer contain the storm gathering above. In the narrow alleys and smoky taverns, loyalists and patriots eyed each other with suspicion. The British redcoats marched with polished boots and scowling faces, their heavy muskets a harsh reminder of the Crown's iron grip. Amid this charged atmosphere, 16-year-old Nathaniel Greene, apprenticed to Samuel Adams's printer shop on King Street, moved with careful purpose. His hands, ink-stained and nimble, pulled sheets of parchment from the press, turning out copies of the Boston Gazette and other pamphlets that flooded the city with news, and sometimes, secrets. Nathaniel's task was simple on the surface: print, fold, and distribute. Yet beneath the clack of movable type and the scent of ink, his mind worked like the intricate gears of a clock, hiding subtle coded messages that only the patriots could decipher. It began months earlier, when Samuel Adams, revered leader and master of clandestine resistance, had drawn Nathaniel aside in the dim glow of the candlelit print shop. "Boy," Adams whispered, his voice low and urgent, "the king's men listen too much, watch too closely. We cannot speak our plans aloud. Your work must be more than mere words. You'll hide our messages in plain sight." Nathaniel swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. The weight of the task settled on his young shoulders like a cloak he could not slip off. He was just a printer's apprentice, a boy among men. But now he was a secret keeper, a silent warrior of the revolution. The technique Samuel Adams taught him was as subtle as the faintest wisp of smoke. Nathaniel would arrange the type so that certain letters, when read diagonally or in a particular sequence, formed words beyond the headline's meaning. A letter here, a misplaced comma there. This was code to the trained eye. The Loyalists might see only news of the trade embargo or the arrival of British reinforcements. The Patriots would find warnings, instructions, and rallying cries buried beneath those printed lines. The first messages were cautious, almost trivial. "Meet by lantern's last flicker," or "Hold the powder dry." Nathaniel's fingers trembled each time he slipped these phrases into the text, fearing discovery. But the urgency of Lexington and Concord changed everything. The shots fired on April 19 shattered the fragile peace, and Boston flooded with soldiers and spies. On a gray morning thick with mist, Nathaniel folded the latest Gazette with a message that seemed innocent enough. A list of prices for tea and molasses, a notice of the governor's latest proclamation. But nestled between the columns, the first letters of certain lines spelled out in bold clear print, "Rebels strike at dawn." That night, Nathaniel watched from the shadowed doorway as men moved under the dim street lamps. Men who received his newspapers with nods and quiet thanks. Among them were men like Paul Revere, their faces grim but determined. These coded messages were their lifeblood, a whisper in the roar of war. Yet danger sat like a hawk overhead. British soldiers patrolled the streets, their suspicions growing with each act of defiance. One evening, as Nathaniel hurried toward the print shop, a hand clamped on his shoulder. He stiffened. Before him stood Sergeant Major Wilkins, a hawkish man with cold eyes that missed nothing. "What news do you carry, lad?" Wilkins's voice was low but edged with menace. Nathaniel's heart pounded. He forced calm, offering a ledger from the shop. "Just the city accounts, sir." Wilkins snatched the book, flipping pages slowly, searching. Nathaniel's breath caught as his fingers hovered near the hidden message. The letters shifted ever so slightly from the norm. But Wilkins said nothing, finally tossing the book aside with a grunt. "Watch yourself," he warned before melting back into the fog. That close call drove home the peril of his mission. Yet Nathaniel refused to stop. The revolution's fate hinged upon the whispered secrets beneath each newspaper's headline. Weeks passed, and the encoded warnings grew bolder. Detailed maps of British deployment slipped between stories of colonial markets. Messages called for militia to gather, the locations coded in seemingly innocent poetry lines about springtime and harvest. Nathaniel spent sleepless nights balancing the invisible ink and shifting type, fearful that a single misstep would lead to his ruin. One cold evening, late in May, a messenger arrived with troubling news. The British planned to seize the arsenal hidden beneath Concord. Patriot leaders needed to know, and quickly. Nathaniel bent over the press, his hands shaking with exhaustion and desperation. He scrambled to find words that would slip past censorship, arranging entire paragraphs so the first letters spelled, "Concord under assault," warned the militia. The papers rolled off the press as the city slumbered, and Nathaniel's heart hammered in the cold quiet. Before dawn, riders carried the coded gazette through back alleys and over hidden paths, their urgency a mirrored pulse to Nathaniel's own. Despite their efforts, the British forces marched toward Concord as the sun rose. The battles at Lexington and Concord raged, a brutal clash that would ignite the colony's fight for freedom. Nathaniel's coded warnings had helped muster militia from the surrounding countryside, their timely arrival tipping the scales in the Patriots' favor. Amid the chaos, Nathaniel found himself once again pulled into the shadows, this time by Reverend Jonathan Mason, one of the Sons of Liberty. "Your work saved lives, boy," the Reverend said, clasping his shoulder. "But the Redcoats will search for the source. You must be cautious, now more than ever." 2 days later, Boston became a city under siege. The British closed in, suspicion thick in every corner. Nathaniel's print shop was raided, servants turned away, yet the master printer and his apprentice worked with quiet determination. Each secret message was buried deeper, phrases masked within innocuous news, with ciphers so intricate only those trusted could unwind them. On a blistering summer afternoon, as Nathaniel loaded the press, a woman appeared at the door, a courier from the countryside. She handed him a folded sheet stamped with a crimson seal. A call for aid, clear as a noon bell. Nathaniel smiled faintly, wiping sweat from his brow. Still, beneath that hope lay a heavy fear. This war was far from over. The newspaper was no longer just culture or commerce. It was a weapon beneath the Redcoats' boots. The revolutionaries grew bolder, their coded messages weaving through broadsheets and pamphlets, fastening communities together in defiance. Nathaniel's secret printing became a thread stitching the fragile network of rebellion, connecting farms, taverns, and secret chambers. In the months that followed, Boston's streets whispered stories of defiance, bravery, and sacrifice. Nathaniel worked quietly, ingraining the spirit of freedom one coded letter at a time. He knew every printed paper was a risk, every hidden message a silent prayer. The final winter before independence saw the city gripped by siege and famine. Yet the presses never stopped humming, the words flowing like a lifeblood of hope and resistance. Nathaniel, now more skilled and resolute, embedded messages urging unity and perseverance, setting symbols that would become legend. Long after the muskets fell silent and the flag of liberty was raised over Boston's harbor, Nathaniel's coded newspapers remained a testament to the invisible fight. The stories beneath the Redcoats' boots, woven in ink and courage, that helped spark a nation's birth. Though few would know his name, the young printer had printed hope, and history itself, with every stroke beneath those heavy boots, forever part of the revolution's whispered truth.